Welcome to, this is the third one, right?
Yes, I believe this is the third episode of Anne and Mimi's Crabbiness Hour.
And boy, are we crabby. This will probably be more than an hour. All right, so here's the working list that we've got for this time. It's a pretty long list, but like everybody failed civics is one of our hot topics. We had some interesting constituent communication in which there was a demand for an audit of public safety. And I don't know what that means. So maybe we can talk about that. Zoning, cliffhanger for next time.
It's going to be a long process.
Yep.
It is going to be a long process despite a flood of people attempting to get out of it.
Yes.
Like, stop it now. We can't bear it anymore. You're making us think.
Stay tuned. You won't believe what happens next. We will probably double back to zoning again. What the hell rules are? What does that mean? What does legal form mean? Why does stuff take so long? Another one. Mimi, I hear you hate the voters. Followed by civility. Who is it for? What is the financial cost if we just stop this process? So that kind of doubles back to zoning. We should definitely talk about that. My notes also just say Zoom fail, planning board, with a hybrid meeting that had maybe 6 members of the public in attendance.
Yeah, there was one person who tried to join live, and there were 5 members of the public who tried to join on Zoom.
And it was thwarted by technical mishaps because hybrid is not great for everybody.
Yeah, hybrid is difficult, and also the city council chambers are really set up to do hybrid, and
right.
It works brilliantly. Nobody else has that kind of access.
Right. They were not in city council chambers. They were in the meeting room adjacent. What called the old tax collector's office, something like this?
Yeah. Even when the 4th floor conference room in the annex was not under permanent reconstruction, it didn't have the kind of wireless access or just the hardware that you need to make a hybrid meeting work.
Yeah,
so they tried valiantly, but they failed.
Yeah, we ran into similar trouble. Like the Holyoke Local Cultural Council, we tried doing hybrid meetings, but we were upstairs offside the ballroom in our office up there. There's no, like the Wi-Fi doesn't work up there. And in order to have this meeting be hybrid, we had to use my laptop, someone else's hotspot, and somebody else's Zoom account. It just didn't work. It was untenable. And then nobody showed up anyway. Yeah. I just have WTF ordinance on here, which could be so many things. Noise issues, because boy, do we have a lot of noise issues to talk about. And I definitely want to talk about traffic stuff on Laurel and Brown and speed hump petitions, which don't actually mean you're getting speed humps. Should we begin with the business?
Yeah, I think this is a good time to mention that tonight, if everything goes well, we are going to vote on a ordinance change that would make it possible for the Holyoke City Council to finally start passing ordinances by simple majority.
Which is what everybody else does, right?
Which is the tradition of Massachusetts in general in its legislative bodies. It is the tradition of the United States, the filibuster notwithstanding. That's just a rule of the Senate that is not in the Constitution and not in the actual statutory law. They could change their minds about that any time.
That's true.
But for many years, as long as I've been paying attention to the City Council, it has contrived to, either by rule or by ordinance or by both, require a 2/3 supermajority to pass anything. And the result, at least in my opinion, has been a permanent heckler's veto. It has enabled people with an agenda that the majority does not want to demand changes to things that they want in order to get, critical stuff like financial reform through.
This sounds like what we just went through last year.
It sounds like what we just went through last year. And now we have this ordinance. It's a very simple change, and it's on the council's agenda for tonight. My hope, obviously, because I've been begging the council to change this since I became interested in Holyoke politics at all. And that's now, 10 years, maybe longer. But it connects to everything else that we're looking at tonight, because if this passes, the permanent speed bumps for a lot of ordinance changes, like if we want to rewrite the noise ordinances, for instance,
Boy, do we ever.
yeah, just give some relief to people who are suffering from noise in many forms.
Yep.
If all is well, if there are 9 votes on the council to change this now, we can start doing this work with 7 votes, and that will make a huge difference to how much we can get done.
Right. And not just this, but like future councils. It's not just this council. It is something that is going to make government work more efficiently and more straightforwardly into the future.
And it will also enable us to move faster. When there's a problem, it won't be held up nearly as long.
Right. This connects right exactly to why does stuff take so long?
Yeah.
Do we want to dive into that? Do you want to finish this up and then like the reason it takes so long is because, as if there were just one reason.
Yeah, there are so many reasons. But yeah, I think that I have one final thought about this, and then we can pivot. And that is, it has been really interesting to me for the past 5 months or so to hear complaints about how certain changes mean that the city council is giving up its power.
Oh, yes. This is adjacent to the special permits conversation.
Yeah. Adjacent to, but also adjacent to who hires which city official.
Yep.
It is adjacent to why it supposedly isn't sufficient for the council to have advise and consent power.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we confirm a whole lot of city officials, and I have heard the claim that, well, that doesn't count as city council power because we never say no. Well, that's a choice if you never say no.
True.
And we hear over and over and over, particularly with the financial reforms, but not only with the financial reforms. Oh no, why are you voluntarily giving away power to the executive branch? Why do you, as Anne says, want to transfer special permits to the planning board? And yet it is these same people who insist that we take the most basic power that the council has, which is the legislative power. That's what we're supposed to do. And permanently put it out of our own reach so we can't use it.
Right.
That, you know, if you want to empower the city council, you make it possible for it to legislate.
Right. I mean, and this sort of feels adjacent to the conversation that just happened yesterday in DGR with a petitioner and a deck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that lovely family who came in needing a special permit to build a deck for reasons that we need not go into. The committee on DGR sat there, listened to a few sentences, and looked blankly when the call came, does anyone have any questions? And I eventually asked some, just in order to develop enough information so that we could write a special permit. You know, you have to make findings if you're doing this right. You have to say, here is why this is not substantially more deleterious than the pre-existing non-conforming condition.
And these are not things that have traditionally been done frequently in the past, adding the conditions.
The planning board with its permits always does it.
Right. City council.
City council has blown it off.
Yeah, I have seen, I mean, I watched something last year that had to do with like a parking lot and snow removal and this kind of thing, when which the planning board had put in like 19 conditions and city council accepted none of them. And just kind of was like, oh, we don't need that. We don't need this. Da 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 da. I'm like, what?
Oh, I remember that. That was the one where they also didn't realize that what they were looking at was a notice of decision, which they had nothing at all to do with. It had been decided. It had been filed.
And this feels like a good argument for like, those are things that should have gone to the planning board because city council didn't get it right, correct? Or didn't seem to get it right.
No, I think they did get it more or less right. They issued the special permit, and people might have questioned that. People might have asked why they didn't ask more questions at the time. But they did ultimately realize, I think, that
perhaps this is not our forte.
Yeah. Yeah. But it just, like, why are we doing this? Because none of us, including me, really knew what we should be asking. I just knew what we needed to fill out a special permit. And one of the members of the committee objected.
Ah, yes.
At least seemed to. So, what are we doing here? Just making these people come in front of the entire committee of the council to show their deference to us? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and we saw something like that also happen in ordinance, and there's been some other kind of issues with this. Maybe this dovetails into, why does this take so long? Why do these things take so long?
Yeah, although before we move off, I should just say for the record that there are special permits that the council absolutely should grant.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's just these where we don't know what we're doing that we shouldn't be doing.
Yes, I feel like those should go to a body that knows what they're doing and understands the fine points involved. Yeah. Like, I am not a city engineer. I don't know all this stuff. I don't know civil engineering. I know when people are like, why are people speeding down my street? And then I have to talk to someone who knows about these things to be like, hey, what can we do about this?
Yeah. But meanwhile, why do you think things take so long?
Oh, my God. Well, in part of it, I think, again, this dovetails with everybody failed civics.
Nobody took civics.
Nobody took civics. We don't really teach civics anymore. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in high school, but,
Yeah.
I think the general feeling is that the more I talk to folks, the more the people don't understand the process. And sort of like, why would you? It's very hyper-specific knowledge. But basically the process, and I'll use public safety as an example because that is the committee that I chair. And we're kind of centralizing different things that we're talking about. But in order for something to get moved on, I have to write an order. Like, for example, and this will dovetail with Brown and Laurel. Like, I recently wrote and filed an order to get updates from the DPW and the city engineer about what's going on Laurel and Brown. Because we had 2 really bad accidents in the space of 2 days, including property harm and personal, harm. Like, people went to the hospital. And these things are things that need to be addressed and managed. But I, not being a civil engineer, my role is mostly like, hey, can we have a discussion about this? And so I write and file an order, which goes before the city council, and people can come speak on it in public comment, and then it gets assigned to a committee. And then depending on the committee, they usually meet at least once a month. Like in public safety, we try to meet once a month, and I try to get it on a regular schedule because ordinance was going a little wild, so I wanted to make sure I got some time. Public safety meets on the second Monday of the month. And that is a regular standing schedule. And so, for example, this order that I just wrote is going before the city council tonight. It will get assigned to public safety because I asked for it. And usually when you write an order that's specific to a committee, they send it there. But I don't know, they could send it somewhere else, theoretically. And then it sits in the jacket, which is just a manila, a folder full of printed out stuff of things. And then it gets put on the agenda. And it is up to the chair when it goes on the agenda. And I have, again, been trying to theme stuff. So like noise meetings or things surrounding the DPW or whatever, so that people aren't getting called on Thursday to be like, hey, can you make it to a meeting on Monday night? Like, that's rude. People are working. People got stuff to do and lives to lead. So I try to, put out a framework of an agenda. I have an idea of what I want to do. I have a working agenda. And then we send out invitations and see who can make it. Not everybody can make it all the time. Like, the police were invited to our last public safety meeting, but something came up at the last minute, as things often happen, and they weren't able to come. No shade. Again, that is the needs of the city. And so we discuss it in committee. And so then it gets sent back to the full body for like a resolution and a vote. And if there is action to happen, again, we're just the legislative branch. We can talk about this thing and say, yeah, this should have some speed interventions. We should do X, Y, and Z. And then the DPW and the city engineer come in and they're like, yeah, we should definitely do this. Cool. And then it goes back to the full body. I'm like, okay, so we talked about this. Here are the interventions that are going to happen. Here's a rough timeline. Boom. And that is the end of our legislative responsibility in terms of how an order works. That's why it takes so long. Because then, like, I don't know how to install speed humps. I didn't do civil engineering. I can't literally go, like, super glue them down to the street. That's not how it works. And how it does work is sometimes it just takes a lot of time. Like, another example, the crosswalk at HCC, which was my predecessor's, white whale, perhaps. because he worked on a lot and sent a lot of orders and yelled at a lot of committees, and it didn't get fixed because it got sent to a bunch of committees, and people are like, why isn't anything happening? And I had to unravel this whole thing, and it boiled down to like two things that we could actionably do, like put in, hey, there's a crosswalk up here, those signs, and also have one of those like flagging systems where you have like the pole and the orange flag on the end of it that you carry across, because those are two immediate things that could be done within like a 6-month span. They haven't happened yet, but I'm hoping they're going to happen soon. Because I'm ready to do that Abbey Road picture with the flags across the street with a deep W. But then the really bigger issue, people were like, well, why can't we just take out that flashing light and put in RFRBs, which are rapid response flashing beacons. It's a crosswalk when you press it and the lights go on. It turns out you can't have a flashing up like traffic light and also an RFRB. You have to take one out to install the other, and to do so, you need to have like a warrant for a traffic study, which costs anywhere between $40,000 and $100,000. And so often people are like, why isn't this happening? I was like, well, because it's expensive. And they're like, well, we should just pay for it. I'm like, great, it's budget season. What do you think we should cut instead?
Yeah.
Because we have a finite amount of money. It's not, I wish it were like, oh, we need this. Be like, great, new sidewalks for everybody. Speed mitigation, this, that, the other. But like we are a scrappy little city and we don't have a huge budget. And if we do something here, that money has to come from somewhere else because there are finite grants. Like the DPW and the city engineer have been applying for funding for traffic interventions for Laurel and Brown. But grants don't move quickly. Installation doesn't happen quickly. Traffic studies don't happen quickly. We're gathering data, but that doesn't help the people in the meantime who are like, could we just please have people stop sideswiping cars and taking mirrors off? Like, and that's part of the issue. This dovetails to the Laurel and Brown conversation, because there's also a perception that if you file a speed hump petition and it goes through city council, speed humps will magically appear.
Yes.
It is not so.
It is not so.
And we're going to talk about it in public safety probably next month in some much greater detail. But yes, that it is like most things municipal, the public understanding and perception and the way things actually get done are in kind of two different places. And a lot of at least what I'm doing, I don't know if ward or if at-large councilors are doing this too, but trying to get a little bit closer to the middle. Particularly like the speed hump petition that popped up on Laurel, like that was years ago. And people are like, where are the speed humps? City council said they'd do it. I was like, it's actually not something that they can put on the street because Mass DOT and this regulation and this thing and the traffic, the number of traffic through the street. And by the way, if you put speed humps on a street, it doesn't get snowplowed as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it's complicated, folks. I mean, we all knew it was complicated, but I just spent 10 minutes talking about how complicated it is.
Yeah. And that at least has the advantage of being an actual issue that
Yeah.
physically can be solved. Because the part that I keep running into, and it's because you are on committees that work on physical things for the most part.
Yes.
I am on committees that deal with the law and with, are we going to permit this or that, or what should the rules be, or do we need a change in the charter to be able to do that? So to a much greater extent, I'm working with paper. And as a result, what I see are the institutional speed bumps, as it were. Like, I've complained before about the open meeting law. I believe in the open meeting law in that I think that everybody should have access to all the information. And everything works better when there's genuine transparency, when you know how your representatives are voting, when you know how they're thinking.
Yep.
And when you have a fair assurance that deals are not being made behind closed doors.
True.
So it's good to have it, except that in practical terms, what this means is that, say, if I and Rick Purcell, who are on the 3-person Charter and Rules Committee, have an idea about what we want to change in a rule, we can't sit down and go over the text.
Right. You have to do it
Because
in open meeting.
You have to do it in open meeting. That means there has to be a Charter and Rules meeting. It means that you have to take the time to sit down and have that conversation. You have to go by Robert's rules, which means that the third committee member who may not agree with us also has every right to have her say. And we have to sit there and draft things, which is a very slow process. If you know what you want, it can be minutes to draft something.
Sure.
If we don't draft it, the law department has to, and the law department has
They get
many
enough to do.
calls on their time.
Yeah.
So we go in, and we have to do it all on the spot. We have maybe one meeting every 3 to 4 weeks, if we're lucky, if we can get the time.
Right. And side point to that, I don't know if people are aware that, like, it's not just that we're on city council, it's that all of us are on I don't think there's anybody who's on one committee. We're all on at least 2 committees. You're on 3.
I'm on 3.
You either lucked out or got the short stick on this one, but I do feel like our committee assignments are well attuned to our skills.
Yeah.
Like, I think Tessa
did
a really, really smart job putting people on specific committees that dovetail with their interest and their skill set and their life experience. I think these are brilliant committee assignments. I just wish ordinance didn't meet all the frickin' time. It's a lot, people. It's a lot.
Yeah. Now, ordinance has a big load, but again, they suffer as much from anybody as
Right.
we have to sit there.
Yeah.
And at least with 5 committee members, it's possible occasionally to talk to one other person and have some kind of, does this sound insane to you, conversation. But it's not something you want to indulge in unless there's a real reason for it, because, public involvement is good. But as a result, it takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it is made worse in some cases by the rules. And
Yes.
the city council rules are very easily manipulable to build time into the process.
Right. Well, and some of them are kind of loosey-goosey. Like, we have a rule in city council that says once a month we have a youth lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I have never seen that happen. And I'm told because they couldn't find folks interested in doing it, which is fair. Like, I don't know if people want to hang out at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday. But we have a whole bunch of rules, some of which are frequently enforced and some of which are kind of talked around, like our civility stuff, which maybe we'll get to, but...
Yeah, I'm not sure we even have any civility stuff in the rules yet.
I mean, I think there's a little bit in there about how we treat each other in chambers, but not outside of chambers, which is where most of the shenanigans happen, specifically social media.
Yeah. Well, here I have to say, I am to a certain extent responsible for that. I did not want to have a rule that said we had to be civil to each other, because how do you define civil?
That's also a good point. The same way, like, how do you define loud? At least with loud, we have decibel levels. With civil, it'd be like, you hurt my feelings a lot this week, or I think you're a jerk. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's hard because people have different cultural expectations.
Absolutely.
I find it very easy to be technically polite. That does not necessarily mean that I'm always being particularly nice.
I love that about you, because I got no poker face. I'm getting a little better at it. But realistically, when somebody says something that I think is crazy bananas pants, it's usually pretty clear how I feel, for better or worse.
Yeah. Well, but I use my example because I think it's clear if you were raised in the same little subculture I was raised in. You know when I am not being nearly as civil as I sound. But you have to know the code, and very few people do anymore.
Yeah.
Which allows me to look much nicer than I fear I am sometimes.
I mean, I do take it, like, this is also why I try to refer to, at least while I'm chairing things, with proper titles and formal names.
Yeah.
That feels important. There's a level of civility that I expect from people I consider my coworkers. And I don't know if that always happens. And I definitely, like, on Facebook, social media, it definitely doesn't happen.
No, it definitely doesn't. But I don't want people being attacked for using the language of their cultures.
Right,
basically.
Of course. Everybody gets itchy about the F-bomb, though. Maybe not everybody. Yeah. I love free speech and the ACLU, so I'm just waiting for someone to, like, and this is particularly around public comment. Like, I want people to come to public comment as they are. I don't want them to feel like they have to be formal. I thought it was great. For a couple of meetings ago, we had someone who gave public comment entirely in Spanish. I love it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We need more of that.
Yeah, and you don't want people afraid to talk to us.
Right. And that is unfortunately happening. Like, we're doing a lot of work with noise, not just in Ward 3, because this is a big hot issue, because we do have some challenges around people being good neighbors between like businesses and organizations and residential neighborhoods. It's not exclusive to Ward 3. We talked about this a lot in public safety around Wyckoff and what's going on up there. This is kind of an adjacent situation in Ward 3. But I have heard from people that they don't feel comfortable coming to public comment. And that is a bummer. I get it, because you don't want to be singled out as a target. And we did see a city councilor dox a member of the public on social media. And I don't think we spent enough time really talking about how serious that is.
It's true. We had it come up briefly in Charter and Rules over the now withdrawn. Is it withdrawn, or is it just on indefinite hold? Order about keeping your camera on.
Right.
But yeah, I think, unfortunately, many of our counselors don't understand how much public safety has changed and how much personal safety has changed, given the amount of information that is easily accessible to just about anybody.
Right. I think about this all the time when I zoom in. I always blur my background because I'm like, I don't want people to know in a recording the dimensions of my apartment. Things like this, like what's in the background and all. No, absolutely not. I understand why people want to have their camera off. This is, for me, sometimes this is also adjacent to like, are we asking the public to do things that we are not asking each other to do?
Yeah.
Like, we have had city councilors who have been on Zoom extensively for weeks. There's a separate order about that, who don't have their live camera on. Like, they might have a picture up of themselves or they might not. Like, we have one city councilor who only phones in to Zoom and never uses a computer, because I don't think he has a computer, because he definitely doesn't have email. But if we have an order that demands the public turn on their cameras, why aren't we doing something similar for us? What makes us above the rules? I mean, the answer is, I don't think we should be.
Yeah, no, I think the clear answer is, I don't think we should be. But the clear answer, I suspect, also is, for some people, they have a strong sense of hierarchy.
Yeah.
And that came up in the whole thing about, should counselors have 2 minutes to respond to anything?
Right.
And I think there was a very sharp difference of opinion between, no, we already have a big enough platform. We're public officials. We can get media attention anytime we like.
True.
And no, I might be wounded. And if I am wounded, I should have a chance to say something about it.
Right. But can you imagine, like, what would have happened if ordinance had been a back and forth like that? Like that first ordinance meeting where people were, I mean, very rightly upset about the process. Although this is what we keep hearing over and over, is that they are upset about the process. We got to start talking about the zoning stuff. But, I mean, we don't have to do it right now.
No.
Ordinance will do it again in September. Side note, I'm glad we picked a different day for that, because it was right at the high holidays. And I get real annoyed when people don't take that into account. Like, it is important to have a broad perspective of many holidays. But yeah, that would have been, I mean, we might have had a fist fight, or somebody might have been told to jump in a body of water.
Yeah. Although I think that actually engaging, and this may be habit, because the planning board, as I've said before, runs much less formally, or did
Right.
when I was there. And the back and forths were actually useful some of the time. And they were never harmful that I know of, but just being able for a member of the public to say, I have a question, and get an immediate answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that is super helpful. I mean, I think about that too, because there was a public safety meeting that we ran a little bit more like a public hearing, because it felt like important to do it, and that back and forth conversation about like what is actually happening in the neighborhood with noise.
Yeah, and it was great. And I loved the part where members of the public started just trading the microphone back and forth between them.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that ideally we would want to have happen, but at the same time, we are a government body, and it is not really a community meeting. We are a legislative body that needs to get actual like work done. And so there's sort of that springboard, like if people want to have community meetings, it's not necessarily ours to organize. Like, people should be able to call their own community meetings and have conversations that don't necessarily center around us.
True enough.
I mean, the community room at the library, Holyoke Media, City Hall Ballroom, there are many places that are available and accessible and open to the public. There seems to be, I mean, maybe this goes back to the civics thing. Like, there seems to be like, you can't just post online. Like, that doesn't really bring everybody in.
Yeah, but neither necessarily does actual physical meetings.
True that. Back to the planning board, where everybody in ordinance, the last two meetings were like, rah, the planning board, they all need to quit, rah, blah, 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 blah. And then 6 members of the public showed up at the planning board meeting recently.
Yep.
You can lead a horse to water? Is that the adage?
Yeah. But also, the planning board meeting, which I need to try to find the recording of it at some point and listen to it. But I gather that their meetings have been perfectly pleasant.
I had heard that too.
And they've been getting useful information that will be used to refine the proposal.
Yeah, which is it should be.
Yeah, what I kept hoping we were going to see. And I think that's the kind of communication where it does help to be able to do the back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people coming in with information and questions.
Yep.
They make you think. You respond to whatever they've brought up. And if you are compiling, I think, a list of questions that you might or might not answer later, go away and think about what have you, it's not as constructive. People actually talking to each other, no matter how upset both sides are when they start, are likely to come to some kind of understanding and at least understand what the problem is better.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something that we've overlooked, great, we need to know it. We don't want to bulldoze it past people.
Right.
If there's something that you haven't explained properly or that somebody who's upset hasn't explained properly, you may find that you're not even mad at each other.
That's true. That is actually a good point.
And, I feel like we could be doing a better job of that, basically.
Sure. Yeah, the flip side of this, though, is like, we're not the public's chew toy.
Yeah.
They don't pay us enough for that.
Yeah, no, I do feel strongly about that.
Yeah.
Like, your feelings about the government, please try not to take them out on us for no good reason. If you have a good reason, that's different.
Sure, yeah, if you have a good reason, that's totally different. But, like, I feel like this has, I mean, I don't know if it's something in the air. I don't know if it's people are like, we live in a currently very challenging hellscape. Like, this timeline is rough, and everybody's just taking it out on each other or what. But, like,
or
I had that moment in ordinance, too, where I was like, can we just talk to each other like people? Like, actual human beings? Like, the taxpayers need this. Like, I am a taxpayer, too.
Mm-hmm. But even more, I know I always come back to this. Yell at me if you want. Do not yell at city staff.
Right.
Do not yell at the volunteers.
Yeah.
It is almost never their fault, and it is not their job to take the abuse.
Correct.
To a certain degree, fine, we're the elected authorities. That doesn't mean we are necessarily the people to grant a special permit, but it does mean that we are the people to take the abuse when there's abuse going around.
Well, maybe not abuse, but, like, I don't love the idea that, like, I'm just going to call and yell at you for 45 minutes because you're mad. I'm like, I have life things happening that maybe make me a little less sympathetic to this right now. But I want people to express their opinions and feel like they're getting heard, but I also want them to understand, like, there's a limited range of stuff we can do. Like, I've had constituents be like, hey, can you tell me the last time the streets were paved between the West Springfield line and the Delaney house?
Yeah, no.
I'm like, maybe the person you want to ask is the city engineer. Like, I feel like in a lot of ways, I want to be the pass-through and empowering people to ask the right people. Like, I'm angry about this, and why can't you fix that, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, the person you want is, in fact, the executive branch.
Almost all the time.
Right. Which also means, like, don't call them up and yell at Nilka. Like, if anybody, I will fight you if you mess with Nilka. so great. And like, we are so lucky to have her. Stephen is also great. Like, the mayor's office has a lot of really good people who are open to hearing these things. It's just a matter of figuring out how to direct traffic. Yeah. And almost always, I mean, people who are acting with good intent, and I don't think everybody is, the people who are acting with good intent usually have like a couple of minutes of like, I am very frustrated about this thing, blah, 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 blah. And when they realize like, actually you're listening to them and validating them, their concerns, they're like, okay, I'm going to stop yelling now because someone is finally hearing it. They're just frustrated. And if we can get past the frustration to the heart of the issue, that's when we can start working on stuff. But like, I'm a human being. If you just yell at me for 10 minutes, I am going to stop listening because I don't need that.
You don't need that. That is inappropriate.
That's totally inappropriate.
And also, I suppose for the current world, the answer or the formulation may be, no, you should not be treating call center workers like this. Definitely do not treat your government employees like call center workers.
Yeah.
Nobody, but that is a bad model, period.
But if we're thinking about like what we do in municipal work as sort of like akin to the service industry, like, don't treat people in the service industry badly. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I don't know which camera to look at. Don't do it. So, yeah. Anyway, where were we? Where should we go from here?
Where shall we go? And how late is it getting?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Cool. We got a long list. I mean, okay, so from my notes, like, we still haven't, like, what is an audit of public safety? What does that even mean? Noise, we kind of covered it. I do want to talk a little bit more about Laurel and Brown. I mean, let's do that and then, like, kind of move into the other topics because there's also civility and we still haven't gotten to, like, I hear you hate the voters. I do want to get there because I know that you don't. I know that you don't actually hate the voters. But it goes part and parcel with like this engineered social media outrage, this manufactured outrage that doesn't really help anybody. If people are trying to get people whipped up to act on things, making them mad or making them afraid is not a great approach. Like, we got enough of that without this business. So let me lay this out for you and we can think creatively about this because I appreciate your brain at all times, right? Laurel and Brown, which is also my neighborhood. I live on Brown. We're talking about the stretch of Laurel, which goes from Northampton Street down and T-bars into Brown, and then from Brown down to South Street. And so one of the things is we have a very complicated, technically 4 stop sign intersection at that T-bar on Laurel and Brown. And I live in the apartments there. So whenever there's a car crash, I hear it. People run those stop signs constantly. Even though HPD has done a lot of increased enforcement there. Sometimes in a cruiser and sometimes in a plainclothes car. Because again, if I'm working from home, I see them roll up. And they give tickets, they do that kind of enforcement, but they can't be there 24/7. Yeah. And so it took 2 years once to get the crosswalks repainted, and they tend to wear out really quickly. I know that there was last term before we came onto the council, the speed limit was it's 25 across the city unless otherwise signed, is my understanding. Mm-hmm. The speed limit technically got dropped on Laurel from 30 to 25. Except the 30-mile-an-hour stop sign or signage is still up. And the main issue is that people they use it as a cut-through because they don't want to go through the lights down on South Street in Northampton. They zip through the neighborhood. And, like, this is terrible because, like, cars get sideswiped all the time. People run into parked cars because people park along that stretch. Coming off of Willow and turning onto Laurel is a really hard, like, you don't have good sight lines on that, and especially not if somebody's parked. People have had their dogs hit and killed. We've had severe accidents, property damage, personal harm. Like, there is someone who was hospitalized with the most recent accident. Yeah. And residents are like, what can we do? And then the petition for the speed humps went through city council a couple years ago, but that roadway, for a lot of complicated mass DOT reasons, is not eligible for speed humps. Which is a whole long thing. I know everybody is like, what do you mean it's not eligible? Like, and this is one of those instances where it's like the city engineer and the DPW have all those reasons listed out. And some of it has to do with the volume of traffic that goes over the roadway. Some of it has to do with Mass DOT classifications, different regulations around like the weight of the cars that come through, like all this very complicated city civil engineering stuff that, again, I am not a civil engineer and I did not go to school for this. And I'm the intermediary between the neighborhood who's like, where are speed bumps? And everywhere all across the city, like we had this in public safety last week. Like, what about Upland Street? Where are speed bumps? I'm like, they're coming. They're temporary, right? And we had some like that little radar sign that was like your speed, but it's gone now.
Yeah,
and
maybe on Madison now.
Yeah. Oh, because they move them around because they're trying to get different data from different points. This also comes through public safety, but also some of those things are maybe like it's interesting data, but it's not the whole picture. And I'm thinking about like, well, what else can we do? Because the city engineer has applied for grants and they're doing like a traffic study, but that's $150,000. Like, what do we do in the meantime? Is it painting the yellow lines down the middle of the street? Is it making the stop sign things bigger? Is it creative painting like they do in Europe where it looks like an optical illusion so everybody stops? What do we do? Yeah. What can we do?
Yeah, no, I think one thing we need to do is find out what Mass DOT will allow us to do.
Right, and that's a city engineer question. Yeah.
It may be a city engineer question, but my understanding is that speed bumps actually are not all of that helpful.
No, they definitely haven't been. Like if you look at Lawler, which does have speed humps, and then there are a couple of other places that have speed humps, people are like, well, people slow down when their head hits the top of the car. I'm like, that doesn't mean that they're going slowly. That means they're going too fast over the speed bumps. And they're like, putting the speed bumps in is a possible deterrent, but really the deterrent is the person's foot on the gas pedal, you know?
Yeah. No, I would think, the Europe solution makes some sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a body of emerging work about traffic engineering.
Right, BikePed talks about this all the time.
The Confessions of a Failed Traffic Engineer.
Whoa!
Actual book.
Oh, man.
And, we looked at this to some extent while the whole question of Duncan on 141.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
But I do wonder in a situation like that, how critical is it for Brown and Laurel to be open to this kind of traffic?
That's
whether you want to step back and turn it into more of a neighborhood street and less of a cut through.
Right.
Which, if this were a European city, they would probably be narrowing the street, which I realize costs money.
And this is something that the city engineer has mentioned as a possibility, but again, they have to do the study first with another agent, like contract with another agency. Like there's a middle step. We can't just be like, let's do this. Like they have to study the thing.
Yeah. But I would be curious to know legally whether somebody could, for instance, get a grant to put in, I don't know, a bunch of trees in giant tubs.
Sure.
Put them on the side of the street, narrow it that way. You haven't messed with, call it a temporary park.
Yeah. I mean, the problem I think that they're going to come back with is there is a lot of traffic.
There is a lot of traffic.
There's a lot of cars.
What you want is for the traffic to go away.
Or for the traffic to slow down.
Yeah.
I think it's more like feasible to get the traffic to slow in some way than to stop it. Because folks were like, well, what about turning Brown into a one-way? What about turning Willow into a one-way? I'm like, well, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but that's going to have some significant city impact. And like there are a bunch of, like those are also very densely populated areas. There are a lot of people living in there, and there is not a lot of parking.
There is not a lot of parking, and if you send a lot of traffic elsewhere, that will be less of a crush.
Yes, it will be less of a crush, but where's the traffic going to go?
Back to South Street, presumably.
Okay, but how? If we put up like local traffic only, then somebody's got to enforce it. And that gets us back to this problem. Like right now, the problem of speeders existing is because you can't enforce it 24/7. And like, what's the flip side? Like traffic cameras? That's more surveillance. I don't know how people feel about that one. I'm not sure I love it, but we got to do something.
Yeah, but if you're having accidents every week.
Yeah, it's pretty frequent.
Expensive and dangerous accidents.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the question. But also, like, what are short-term creative solutions? I know for a while, I think about this the same way I think about coral reefs, right? And ships and things that sink. Like, let's say there was an automobile that should not have been on the public roadway for many, many months. It had a flat tire and it wasn't moving, but it was in the perfect location to slow everybody down. And I feel like we need some coral reefs of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking. You need things, and, narrowing is one of the things that does it.
Sure.
You need things that will make drivers slow down.
Right.
If drivers slow down, some of them will no longer use the cut-through because it will no longer be as efficient to
Right, it won't save them as much time as just going to the light that's actually properly signaled. Yeah, the flip side of this is if you narrow the street and people are still parking on it, like one of the problems that happens a lot now is people's mirrors get clipped. And if you make the street smaller, those mirrors are more in danger potentially of getting clipped. It's like, how do you squeeze the traffic? How do you slow it down? Again, I'm not a city engineer. I don't know what the right answer is, but we got to figure something out. Also, maybe a big block party.
Well, but also, this sounds like a situation where there is no perfect answer.
Correct.
This neighborhood is going to have to decide what it's willing to sacrifice.
Right.
It's going to be parking, or it's going to be efficiency of movement of traffic.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we have a historic house on that street. There are a lot of different considerations.
Yeah.
It's complicated. But also, people are like, it basically goes back to where are the speed bumps? I'm like, well.
Yeah, but if they don't do any good, who cares?
Exactly. That's it. Like, they're not, I don't think they're as effective as people think.
Yeah, because that has been, I've heard at least one of our city engineers say that multiple times.
Yeah. And then also the snow. But that's the thing is like, if we get them here and then this works and then it's not plowed well, perhaps people will be upset that it's not plowed well. It's like, we can't have both things. So,
I suspect that I'm going to just have to trot out for a moment and feed the meter.
Okay. Should we pause for this part or should we here's your intermission? Okay. So we're going to take a brief break. We'll be back in a moment because we've got to feed the meter because we've been too crabby. Wait to see what happens next. All right, back from intermission. Back to it. So,
demand letters.
Yeah, let's talk about a demand letter. So, as you know, recently, as the chair of public safety, I got an email. And I, as a general rule, do not make things public. Like, if somebody sends in a letter or something as a communication, I don't make that public. But it ended up getting posted on a number of different forums. So, let's dive in and talk about it. Yeah. And so this demand letter was like, we're going to do an audit of public safety and we are demanding this. And we're actually, a lot of the things in the demand letter, and I'm using that word because the letter did, are not even things that public safety can do. Like, one of the main things was we demand that the police chief and the enforcement person show up at a city council meeting and answer to us. Or show up at a subcommittee meeting and answer to us. We can't do that. We're not a court. We don't have subpoena power. We can't make people come, right? We can't make them attend. And a list of other things that I think speak to confusion about what is public participation, what is public comment, and what is a public hearing.
Yeah. And such was the way this was written. When I saw it eventually, which I didn't in the first instance, it stopped me because I could not figure out what it was that the writers of the letter were asking for. It sounded as much like we are going to show up with a bunch of signs and demonstrate outside city council chambers.
Which would be fine.
Which would be fine, but it sounded like something like that, much more a sort of public demonstration of outrage over something that wasn't even clearly set forth in the letter.
True.
But my take on it had been that because the committee is called public safety, mm-hmm. A natural reading of it might be that it did have something to do with the police, with fire, with order on the streets. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing in it to tell us what it was. And There was nothing in it that explained what precisely the audit they were calling for was even supposed to be.
Yeah, that felt particularly weird. Like, we are going to do an audit of public safety. Oh, and they also got very angry about the failures of the April meeting, because they were angry that, or they seemed angry that it had been suggested to people dealing with noise at Wyckoff.
Yeah, they were angry about the monitoring of the noise.
Yes, downloading a decibel app, which the people there seemed kind of in favor of. Like, they didn't say, no, that's terrible, that's a waste of our time. But this letter alleged, like, stop asking people to play detective.
Yeah, and now that you bring it back to me, it was also like, we pay your salary. We expect you to do your jobs. Make this happen without asking us to do anything.
And the flip side of this, again, is we're the legislative branch. What they really wanted was the executive branch. And also probably a conversation with the police. So it was a demand letter for a lot of things that we can't even actually do.
And that misunderstood everybody's position.
Correct. And treated it like a public hearing. And this is the thing, is like, we're not opposed to public participation, but the process on this one, and there's a great example of this recently. A constituent wrote a letter, and that letter expressed concerns about how the change in the ordinance to permit the siren to sound again came to pass. And that person wrote a letter to the city council, public record, filed through the city council as an agenda item. And then I asked to have it passed to public safety, because it goes part and parcel with all the noise stuff that we've been talking about. And trying to look at noise, not in like, this is okay and this is not okay, but like looking at it across the city, and particularly around things like ordinance. Like in Holyoke, our noise ordinances go from 11 p.m. at night to 7 a.m. the next day. Whereas surrounding communities like Chicopee, I think, is 9 p.m. West Springfield might be 10 p.m. And most places start at 8 in the morning, not 7. And so maybe that's something that we need to look at, kind of surrounding this noise issue. Things about decibels, things about permitting. Like, who gets a permit? What does that permit look like? Who issues the permit? What are the decibel levels in the permit? All of these different kind of pieces and components kind of in the mix. And some of that's ordinance, and some of this is this organization, and, talking about it broadly and widely. But yeah, the letter writer was really upset that residents it had been suggested to them that they document and record in trying to get enforcement. And sometimes that's tricky because, if HPD comes, sometimes they're like, well, we don't trust the app on your phone. We need an actual decibel meter. All of this is really complicated. But what we thought we were doing in the April meeting, and the sense that I got from the residents, was that we were listening to concerns for specific agenda items, and then having some action items, following up with some different departments, and continuing the process, which is sort of where we're at.
Yeah, because we are the legislative branch, and what we can do, if we have the technical information and the experiential information that we need to craft one, is rewrite the noise ordinances so that it addresses this stuff effectively.
Right. And what I had, and so anyway, this demand letter came in and is just as a communication. And it wasn't until like 8 o'clock the Friday before the Monday of public safety, so like the weekend had already begun, a follow-up email that came in that basically said, oh, I forgot to tell you, I would also like this to be part of public record. I'm like, we can't. It's not related to anything on the agenda, and subcommittees don't have to have public comment. It's not required. Technically, it's not required of the full body either. We just do it all the time because it's a really useful way to get information from folks about what's going on. Plus, more ways to empower people to participate in local government doesn't seem like a bad thing to me. People are mad, I guess, or upset or displeased about the 2-minute limit, which is hard. 2 minutes is short. But also, it's not a community meeting. It's a legislative body trying to get some work done. So that was kind of a complicated point. And in trying to explain to people, like, public safety usually votes to have public comment. We don't always do it at the beginning. Ordinance doesn't always do it at the beginning. Like Ordinance had a meeting recently where public comment happened about 2/3 of the way through the meeting because we had some other things we had to do first. We have traditionally done it at the beginning as a convenience for the members of the public, but that is also, at least in subcommittees, only done if there is a vote of the body to do so. And you will notice in our most recent public safety meeting, it just never came up because nobody had expressed an interest in speaking. Like we didn't see anybody raising their hands on Zoom. And also there was nothing, like the demand letter related not only to nothing on the agenda, it related to nothing in the jacket.
Yeah. And it came in too late for open meeting law.
And they had never asked it in the first place to be part of the record. And so this is one of those things that's frustrating because this individual then went on to blast me on social media about it. And then the explanations, I got blocked. I got blocked and my comments got deleted, which is a bummer because I explained kind of all of this stuff in, I thought, a polite enough letter or polite enough reply. And I had literally been trying to write back to their email when it was like 10 o'clock on a Sunday night or something where all of a sudden I was the bad guy. I'm like, I tried to help and I kind of got kicked in the face. And like, furthermore, like, I know that this process is confusing and difficult for folks, but if you were going to organize people and you were going to come to meetings, why would you come to a subcommittee meeting? Why wouldn't you come before the full body where the entire city council is there? It's kind of what public comment is for. I will also say that the thing that I had suggested, and I still think this is a valid point, is for folks to have community meetings where they get people together and talk about this stuff, because then it's not bound by open meeting law. We don't have to have an agenda. It doesn't have to be noticed. And the community can organize it. They don't need me for this part of the discussion. They can get together and have conversations about this is what's happening and here's the things we need. And then from that information, we can craft orders and then actually operate from those orders on the agenda. Like there is a way to have all this stuff done in a way that both addresses the community need and like the real concerns without it turning into we demand this and this must happen for things that aren't actually within our purview.
Well, there are two things going on here. There is what to do if you are willing to learn the system and you want to actually make change happen. Mm-hmm. And there is living in a narrative.
Right.
You can craft a narrative. It can be very satisfying. You can be convinced it's true, but it doesn't intersect easily or well with reality. You know, it will work if your ambition here is to put yourself in the middle of the story that you're trying to tell.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It has worked for people who one wish it had not worked for.
Right. And this is the question too of like, how do you get community involvement?
Yeah. And
often that goes back like to the community. Like I have office hours, we have meetings and this kind of thing. We do stuff, but a lot like neighborhood associations and other community meetings and all the stuff that's like One Holyoke CDC is doing a lot of work on this. Nueva Esperanza is doing a lot of work on this. Neighbor to Neighbor is doing a lot of work on this. There are already organizations that are doing this kind of thing. If this is change you really want to see, you can network in with those organizations that already have the infrastructure, the connections, and are doing the good work. You don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel.
Well,
or set it on fire and throw it down the hill, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's the latter part that's bad. I would think the more people doing the work, the more...
Yeah.
I mean, you don't all have to band together.
That's true.
At the same time, you have to be looking for something that can actually be done.
Right, and you have to educate yourself on how to do it. Like, that part seems really crucially important. Much the same way, like, don't necessarily rely on... any one person. Like, if you get some bad information from someone, don't assume that it's fact. Do your research, learn about the process. Like, don't just take the word of one person. And furthermore, like, all those things that I said and explained about here's what it is and here's what those are all independently fact checkable. Mm-hmm. And you just got to do the legwork. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what will come of it. I don't know if there's a way to talk about it, if there's a way to get at the issues. I know we've got some interesting things coming to public safety, like noise is going to be our focus. And then we usually go on a July recess, so we're looking probably at August. But I've had some good conversations with different folks. I know that there's an order going in tonight about forming neighborhood watches and how city council should support that. Side note, turns out neighborhood watch is not really a term that people use. I've had deep conversations with the Safe Neighborhood Initiative. They do not use that term. That is not a thing that they say. So, yeah, I think this will be a good future discussion. But yeah, in the meantime, like, the community doesn't have to wait on us. Like, book a room, have some talks, do some things, do the work. I don't know. Does that kind of cover it? I feel better. We've been talking for a while. My rubber chickens are still not here. I was looking forward to being like, rah, 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 cluck. Rah, 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 rah. Maybe next time.
Hey, next time. Rubber chickens, and we will have a whole bunch of new orders that have gone to committee.
Exactly. And we'll get to talk about the things that we're talking about tonight, because I feel like we're talking to ourselves in the future or the past, or like, you won't believe what happened next.
Our theme.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess that wraps it up for now. Thanks for listening. I know this is a little bit longer, and that 7th inning stretch was pretty good. I guess we'll see you soon. I don't know when we'll see you, but I hope it's soon.
Soon. We will set up a time. We will have more to talk about.
Especially the budget.
Oh, God.
All right, and on that note, we're out. Bye, everybody.